Hello everyone, I'm Gonzalo, CMO and co-founder of Recobo, a platform that offers circular solutions for the fashion industry by transforming waste into a valuable resource through connections. Our focus revolves around three key solutions. We created a dead stock marketplace, an upcycling platform for internal stock digitization, and clothing textile recycling. Today, we have a super treat for you. We're joined by one of fashion's biggest experts in circularity and circular design, Elodie Rousselot, co-author and coordinator of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation book, Circular Design for Fashion. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. Hi,
Hello.
Elodie.
Hi,
How are you?
Gonzalo. Very nice. Thank you. How are you?
Really good, really good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super happy to have you. This is a super treat, like I was saying before. I'm gonna go and introduce you a little bit to our audience. Elodie is a design researcher, a system thinker, and an expert in circular design and fashion. Like I said before, she has experience previous in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a strategic design manager, and she served as the project lead for the focus of today's webinar, the book Circular Design for Fashion. And currently, she's working in the automated verification of sustainable and ethical food production and Open SC, and a startup co-founded by BCG and WWF. So a lot into your experience, and we, like I said, we're super excited to have you with us. The idea for today's webinar is for you to have the space to share all of the knowledge that you gather through the research of creating the book Circular Design for Fashion. So let's dive into it. Elodie has prepared some slides to introduce the biggest and most interesting topics of the book. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave you to it. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have some Q&As and some questions that we gather to comment with Elodie.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Yes, thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks a lot for inviting me to be part of this webinar. As you well mentioned, I did work at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for 3 years. This was 2 years ago, and we launched this book, Circular Design for Fashion, 2 years ago already. So I guess to start the story, the best thing to say would be, why does or did the Ellen MacArthur Foundation think about publishing a book on circular design for fashion? Well, when I started at the foundation really wanted to bring the concept of the circular economy to the creatives working in the fashion industry, because the fashion industry is and is still one of the industry that has the worst environmental and social impact, and thus it was a priority for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to move the topic of the circular economy within the creatives working in the fashion industry, so that the fashion industry could transition from a linear, wasteful paradigm towards a circular and more generative industry. And so that's how basically this book came to life. The objective was to actually define what it meant or means to design for a circular fashion industry. So what does circular design is and means for the fashion industry? We had the support of more than 100 stakeholders for this book, from brands and retailers to trend forecasters to journalists to independent designers, buyers, a whole realm of creatives working in the fashion industry and pioneering already on the circular design who helped us shape this definition of what circular design for fashion means. And I would have liked to start this webinar with a slide that was different from this one. First, because I think all of us have seen and is now at this point aware of the amount of waste and pollution the fashion industry generates every year. And I'm pretty sure that we are all quite tired to hear those bad news again and again and again. And on the other hand, I also wished I wouldn't have to show this slide, because I started speaking about circular design for fashion 5 years ago now. And 5 years ago, I was already using that slide and saying that every second, one truck full of clothes is being burned or is being landfilled. I wish 5 years later I would have better news to give. But the reality is that we are still at this stage. The transition from a wasteful model, linear model, toward a circular one is not done yet. There is still a lot of work to do. But today we are going to try to move from those bad news towards a more constructive approach, where we can learn how and where we could start to make a change. So some stats around fashion. Right now, when a garment is acquired, it's used around, in average, 7 times before it goes to the trash bin. It is not a lot. It's a bit like wearing this t-shirt once a week for a bit less than 2 months. That's not a lot. And once this t-shirt goes to the bin, actually only 12% of it is going to be recycled. The rest is going to be burned or is going to go to the landfill. So what can we do? Where can we start to make a change? This is always pretty overwhelming. I've spoken with a lot of creatives along the years, and most probably the first reaction is, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can actually have any impact, because the problem is so systemic that it's too huge to handle. So here today, if there is one thing that I would be extremely grateful and would be for me a real success of this webinar, there's one thing that you keep out of this webinar, is this slide. Whenever at your work, in your day-to-day, whenever you need to make a decision that touches on the design of the product, or the design of the service that you are giving to your customers, or the design of the experience that you give to your customers, the collaboration with the supply chain actors, or the logistics, or the operations of your company, any type of decision that you make, try to ask yourself, in that decision that I am making, am I eliminating waste and pollution? Am I circulating products and material? Am I regenerating nature? Those 3 principles, you could almost like print them, put that on your wall, and always have them up. And you can try to make this decision by focusing on one of the 3. But the real deal, let's say, would be to try to touch upon those 3 principles in combination. That would be where you are truly applying a circular design approach. So not only do you eliminate waste and pollution and that's it, not only do you circulate product and material and that's it, you try to have a combined approach. Those 3 principles can also act as a step-by-step approach. Most probably it will be easier to start by eliminating as much waste and pollution as you can, to then start finding ways to circulate products and materials, and then find ways to regenerate nature. But at the end of the day, the systemic change that is required to move the industry from a linear model to a circular model will come from the combination of those three principles. Sorry. So we have three myths about circular design. What appears in articles in the media or when we talk about circular design is that it's easily interpreted as, okay, it's about using recycled material, or it's about making my product recyclable. Yes, it is, but it's not only about that. Or it's about making my product more durable so it can be used more time. Yes, it is, but it's not only that. Or it's just about the product design. Yes, it is about product design, but not only. And again, I take you back to the three principles. If you use them as a mark to help you, to guide you in your journey, if you think about eliminating waste and pollution, yes, it's from the process in order to produce a product, but it's also from all the logistics that is required for those products to reach market. Circulating products and materials already invites you to think about your business model and the service that you give to your clients. So it goes way beyond product design. And obviously regenerate nature goes way beyond product durability and recyclability. So I'm going to try to give a few strategies that appear in the book for you to know or have a first step approach for each of the principles. So eliminating waste and pollution. We have this chapter in the book that is a bit, sorry, I'm going to drink a bit more water. That is a bit polemical. What about we don't make any product at all? That would be obviously for virtual fashion to answer specific needs of influencers or people having their avatars in the meta world to have and wear products without having the need to have physical products. So obviously, this won't solve. We will still need clothes to wear to protect us from the cold. But I guess this strategy can push you to think about, do I really need to create a real product, a real physical product to serve this need I want, I know my user has? In this example, the fabricant. Second strategy would be to produce on demand. So obviously there are a lot of, it's not easy to manufacture on demand. We know of actually some stakeholders and people who, startups we worked with for the book Circular Design for Fashion, that actually had to stop their business manufacturing on demand because it was just too complex to achieve. But some others are still around and still pushing the manufacturing on demand, like T-Mill. So obviously this helps cut all those dead stock and dead stock of materials and garments that are unsold and that don't reach any customers or users. The third strategy is quite obvious, using materials that is safe, recycled, and coming from renewable resources. So here, Recovo is an example of how to use something that already exists, reuse it. It's not a recycled material per se, but yes, it's a material that would, if not reused by Recovo, would end up most probably being burned or being in landfill. And finally, try zero waste design. So there are already collections of ASOS or others that launch collections that are zero waste. So where the cutting and the pattern cutting don't allow for any waste of fabric during the production process. But you also have other techniques like 3D knitting that is offered here by, for example, Shimaseki, that allow for full garment knitting, so no waste in the production process. Moving on to 4 strategies to circulate products and materials. So I guess the umbrella strategy that holds everything together is this shift in business model that circulating products and materials require. One of the key strategies would be to move the current business models of brands and retailers in the fashion industry, or the main ones, that is to make profit out of selling one product once, towards capturing the value of the same garment being used several times by several users along over a long period of time. So that's when you have all those business models on repair, resell, restyle, rent, and at the end, recycle. For those business models to happen, or for those business models to really work and capture value, you have to redesign the product themselves and take accountability for the product that you put in the market, because you are not going to be able to capture the value of a product that is designed to last only a few wears. You want to create products that last so that you can resell them, restock them, repair them. And you want also to design those products so that they are easily repairable and at the end of their life, easily recyclable. So those product strategies really come from this big shift in the business model. And this shift in his business model is driven by the fact that there is a lot of value that is not yet captured in those garments that are produced. And so that's a huge economic opportunity. And for you to have business models where you actually have one product that has several life after being sold, you want to be able to know where this product comes from, what it's made of, and trace it from the fiber to the first user, second user, third user, so that at the end of its life, you're also able to know, because it's made of this and that, and has received this restyling treatment and this other, I'm able to recycle it this way or this way. So the traceability of the product, the digital passport, is not only a regulatory compliance tool, it's also a huge enabler for alternative business model to the linear business model to happen. So, for example, this company called Eon offers this type of traceability service for fashion garments. And finally, the third principle, regenerating nature, is obviously one of the main complex ones, because how can the fashion industry not only reduce its impact on the environment and on people, but play an active role in regenerating nature? So I guess the first starting point would be to, in case you are sourcing natural fibers, look at how those natural fibers are grown and really deep dive into the farming itself. In conventional farming, when you go to a conventional farm, you can see monocrop. You can hear only a few birds. You don't see a lot of insects. The soil is usually dry and like dusty. And it's all because there is a high level of chemical fertilizers and pesticides being used. It's because there is only one crop being grown on the same site that also like it kind of kills the soil. So there is basically not much life in conventional farms. And this is for cotton, but if we look at intensive animal growing, it's also not great. But if you look at regenerative farming, it's really playing in accordance with life and how to create an ecosystem where the crops can grow, the animal can live, but in combination with other crops, with other animals, so that the soil can be fertilized, the biodiversity can come back, and each of those species can actually act as a protector of the others against potential pests, for example. For the fashion industry to move towards regenerating nature, there are already some certification around regenerative cotton or regenerative leather. This is very much of a nascent field. So I would truly advise anyone looking into regenerative certified cotton or regenerative certified leather to really look at the criteria of those certification. There is no one definition yet of what regenerative agriculture means. It's very different from crop to crop, from country to country, from bioregion to bioregion even. So I guess the one tip here would just be for you to start having a look at how those natural fibers are grown, understand the impact that those cultures have on the ecosystem, and see if you want to keep on sourcing those natural fibers or help the farmers transition as well towards a more regenerative model. If so, how? So obviously, if there are three truths about circular design, is that it's not going to be one person solving it in a company. It's going to be about collaboration across companies towards creating a system that allows for circularity. And it's not going to be from one day to the other. It's going to require to try, learn, iterate, fail, try again, and accepting basically that it's going to be a journey. But I wanted to leave you with a few tips and tricks about circular design, because I know that this is always still overwhelming when we hear about all of those different strategies. So if that helps, whenever, wherever, whichever company you work for, if there are some people interested in this transition in your company, try to invite them for a coffee or even in a more formal settings as well, if you feel the company is ready for it. And run this exercise. Start mapping the supply chain of your company, whatever it is. If it's a brand or retailer, then try to go up, down to the fiber production, up to the after use of the garment that you are selling. And then ask yourself for each of those steps, and you're going to learn a lot already by looking at each step and understanding what you actually don't know, which are going to be the very interesting points in this process. Do you know what is happening at each step? And would you be able to identify for each step where waste and pollution is happening, where there are opportunities to circulate products and materials, and where are there opportunities to regenerate nature? By just doing this exercise, you will already be ahead of the curve in terms of circular design, because your brain will already think, combining the three principles, how you can actually change the system your company is based on. So that was it for today from me. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Elodie. That was such a great presentation, and as I was saying before, we're so lucky to have you with us today and share all of the knowledge that you gather through creating and co-authoring this book. So it's super valuable, and I really like the way you introduce how it is a collaborative effort, the journey to circularity, and how it involves many key figures in fashion companies, and how it should be a super vertical, horizontal process for the companies. So I really loved it. I will go ahead and ask you some questions that we gathered these past few days, if you are able to answer them. I was gathering all of these questions, and these ones were the ones that brought me more interest. So this one was involved the process of creating this book, during the development of developing the book, which were the main breakthroughs or some insights, key insights that you discovered in terms of circular design that influence your perspective.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And first, let me say that I feel very proud to be invited by you in this webinar. So I really want to state that first. The book itself, it wasn't a book at the beginning. It really started from a design challenge that was given to me by the foundation when I started. That was, we want to bring the concept of circular economy to creatives working in the fashion industry. Why? Because the foundation 5 years ago was really good at spreading the concept of the circular economy to businesses, academia, but it's true that it was not extremely appealing to designers, creatives, and this was a big strategical kind of audience they wanted to reach. And with that in mind, we thought, okay, let's start with the fashion industry, because those are also pioneers, influencers, those creatives working in the fashion industry that will also be able to influence others. Plus, the fashion industry has such an impact in terms of linearity that, that just makes sense. And so started 6 months of research, going to the fields to visit the supply chain in China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and speaking with creatives, so designers, but also the buyers, the merchandisers, the people at the supplier level, in garment production, pattern makers, cutters, everyone, because at the end, every one of them are making creative decisions during their job. And so that's when we also ended up with a definition of what a creative, or who are the creatives of the fashion industry. At the end, it's anyone who has an impact on the product that are sold and the way they are sold. So it's kind of really open.
Yeah.
And and with that, we got to map a little bit the mindset of those creatives regarding sustainability, the circular economy, and we figured that there were people very much pioneering circular design or sustainable design, going towards circularity, people not interested in it at all, and then two other mindsets, people really, really impacted by the negative impact the fashion industry has and so on, but didn't know what to do. And people who were doing something already, really trying to do something, but the actions that they were taking were kind of counterproductive in terms of circularity because of a lack of understanding of the systemic issues behind. And so we say, okay, basically we want to reach the three mindsets of people. The ones that are not interesting, we are not going to, it's okay. It will come to them at some point, but our target are the three other ones. But of course, the one challenge that those three mindsets had was, I'm still overwhelmed and I still don't know if what I'm doing is okay in terms of circularity, and I still don't know exactly what steps that I should take, because it's not very much defined what circular design is, or what does it mean to design for a circular economy in the fashion industry. So we said, okay, given the reputation of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in terms of circular economy, and given the network of stakeholders that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation attracts, there is a way that we could put out there an artifact that would legitimate and define what circular design means for the fashion industry. And that's when the idea of the book was born. And that's when we started speaking with the pioneers and others and critical friends, and came up at the end of the 2 years and a half with this book.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask how long did it take for the whole elaboration of the book, so I understand all of the research that came into it. So
6 months of research, and then we started writing, and maybe the whole overall the process 2 years and a half.
Yeah. Okay, great. We covered a little bit of tips, and strategies to companies to incorporate circular design to their companies. How would you advise them to communicate or measure all of these efforts that they are already implementing in terms of circular design for their consumers?
Yeah, I guess this is all the claiming and the verification is an area that is
it takes a lot of conversation.
Indeed, what can you claim? When? Which proof are you able to bring? How much transparency do you want to give, actually? So currently, I'm not working at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation anymore. I'm working for a startup called OpenSC that you mentioned already. And we actually work in that space, trying to gather evidence along the supply chain that brands and retailers can then use to claim, in our case, ethical and sustainable food production.
Yeah.
In saying that, it's not about advertising where I work now, but just saying that it's a very complex design challenge that requires transparency to the level that companies are maybe not yet ready to gather, because the supply chains are not set up to be that transparent.
Yeah, so, to provide that information, even
to provide the data. Yes. So this is a change process for sure. This is extremely interesting, but this is also the key enabler for rightful claims to be announced by brands and retailers. So in that space, I guess what I would advise any brand or retailer is to start with the tips and tricks of the previous slide. Look at your supply chain, figure out what you know so that you can figure out what you don't know, and you can put processes in place to make traceability a real thing for what exactly, a reality.
Yeah, and support everything with transparent information and data that supports the claims of those efforts. Yeah, definitely.
Enough evidence.
Evidence, exactly. Okay, you mentioned that you transitioned to another industry. However, you are very much involved in the fashion industry. So I was curious to know which is the vision that you have for the fashion industry in terms of sustainable materials and how we can live in the mainstream fashion industry in terms of what is scalable, what is innovative, and this vision for the future. Considering that
I think,
you moved on a little bit from the industry, but
yeah, well, I moved on because I was fascinated by the third principle, that is regenerate nature. And there is
yes,
no way to regenerate nature if you don't get close to what is grown on earth, the land. So food, but the fibers is the same.
yeah,
No? So that's why I moved towards
yes,
regenerative agriculture for food. But to answer your question, I think startups like Recovo are offering solution to the industry, and is definitely a piece of a circular ecosystem that needs to be in place for the fashion industry to move from a linear to a circular model. So by offering services like Recovo, a circulating dead stock, offering the possibility for companies to source their materials from sources that already exist and don't need to be produced just for this one product. This is key.
mm-hmm.
And this can serve the materials that are maybe coming also from, let's say, man-made fibers that can be then recycled as well, etc. And for the natural fibers and materials, I think the fashion industry needs to start looking really at the farmers they are buying from, and the way that they can support those farmers transition from conventional farming towards regenerative farming
Yes,
practices. And I say support because this transition is risky for the farmers, and definitely needs economic and financial support from brands and retailers to happen.
yes, to feel supported, exactly. Great. Great. So I have just one last question. We know that the fashion industry is very oriented to trends, and it works very much into that direction, and it's a creative industry. So how would you say that circular design principles can integrate themselves in this ever-changing industry that is looking for trends and creative changes?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. For me, actually, I mean, circular design is nothing different than design. It's design. It's just that the same way you have aesthetical principle when you design, or your own set of ethical principle when you
Yeah.
design, you just add those three circular principles when you design as well, and you integrate them as part of who you are as a designer or a creative or decision maker. And so this goes beyond trends. This goes beyond, this is what needs to be thought about for 2025 Pantone color of the year. This goes beyond that, because those are principles that are, yeah, they don't have an expiry date.
Exactly.
As long as the fashion industry is creating this amount of waste and pollution, is as long as we are on this kind of awful pathway towards the warming up of our planet, I think those principles are pretty much, really much, very much on trend.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was a tricky questions because many people think that sustainable fashion or circular fashion has to look one kind of way, and it's been proven that there are so many options and strategies that you can integrate that still go hand to hand with creativity and design. And ourselves, we see it every day with the companies that we work with, and they are on fashion weeks all over the world, and they're still being able to communicate that element to their designs. So it's something that I like to put it out there, but it is completely related and timeless for circular design principles, for sure.
I agree.
Definitely.
I totally agree.
So this would be the end of today's session. I don't know if you might have any questions or any.
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, I had a great time. So thank you.
Thank you, Elodie. So you can find Elodie if you still have some other questions that you might have, or you can contact the team at Recobo. We'd like to thank you, everyone, that has joined today's webinar, and we will keep you updated to the new webinars that are coming up. And thank you again, Elodie, for your time and your knowledge. It is a super masterclass.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye bye.